everybody, welcome back to Mimi's Mixed Bag. Today I am doing a project that is a Christmas countdown blocks. It's something I saw on Pinterest that I've been intending to make for a couple years now, and it was also the reason why I was going to make so many was I was going to participate in a Christmas craft fair, but with me having the grandkids so much, I was not going to be able to get as much done as I wanted to get done. So I'm going to go ahead and at least get this project done. My husband had a 2x4 and he cut it into some 7-inch lengths for me. And then he had a 4x4 fence post and he cut it into 3 3/8 blocks. And you see that the blocks fit perfectly on this 7-inch 2x4. And you also need an orbital sander, and if you don't have an orbital sander, you can always use a sanding block or just a sheet of sandpaper. But you know, an electric sander certainly does a better job just to get the sharp edges, you know, down a little bit, and just makes it look a little more finished. And what I don't have out here that I will use up in my craft room is maybe some primer paint, some acrylic craft paint, and some different scrapbook paper, some holiday scrapbook paper. Now, you know, this project you could do for a Thanksgiving countdown, Easter countdown, whatever kind of, you know, holiday paper you might have, but I'm going to, you know, make these Christmas ones. But it would be really cute, even if it's a Disney trip countdown or anything. I've seen them all sorts of themes. So anyway, my goal today is to get it primed, and I usually prime it with some outdoor, like some gallon of leftover outdoor paint we have, because it's raw wood and it usually takes several coats. And if I paint it just with the little 2-ounce craft bottles, it takes a lot of paint. So it's always better just to go ahead and prime it with some leftover outdoor paint, and then I'll go back on my final coat and do my decorative color that I want. So anyway, I will this afternoon or tonight, when my goal is to get them sanded and at least get them painted before I start Mod Podge and decorating them. Okay, I'm in part 2 of my Christmas countdown blocks. I spent a good part of the afternoon getting these coated. You know, I just used a outdoor paint my husband had in the garage, a gallon of something that was just in his stash, and it really does save your craft paint. And it took a couple coats of just these since they were raw wood. You know, if you tried to paint the raw wood with just these little 2-ounce craft paints, it would take several bottles just to get, you know, these 4 blocks painted. So now that I've primed them really well, you know, probably one good coat of the colored craft paint. Okay, and so what I did is, you know, after I paint them, I'm going to eventually Mod Podge the blocks. And so I pulled out some samples of my paper I'm going to use, and the next step I'll show you what paper pads I used. But most of my colors are kind of muted Christmas colors, so I just went in my stash and pulled out all the reds I had and all the greens. And I really do need to use these up because they do get old at some point in time. And so I'll probably just mix all these greens together and all these reds together, and I'll just try to stretch it as far as I can. So I'll probably make 2 or 3 sets green and a couple sets red. So we'll just see how it goes when I get them all mixed up. And you can actually dilute this acrylic paint just a tad if I need to. But anyway, that's my next step. And so when I come back to you, I will have all my blocks painted and ready to Mod Podge. All right, I think I'm going to call it a day. It's about 8 o'clock at night, but I did get my goals accomplished today. I did get my blocks sanded and primed and painted, and so I think they turned out really well. With me mixing 2 or 3 colors of green together, I had a lot more green than I needed, and so I just went ahead and painted all the cubes green, and I colored the base block kind of burgundy color. And, you know, because they're all going to different people, so it doesn't matter if they're just alike. I'll show you my paper that I've picked out to use. This pad on the right is a Whitlock design, and you can get that at Hobby Lobby. And she always has really cute paper. That's a Christmas this and that 6x6 pad. And the one on the left is a Jolly brand, American Crafts. And I actually got that at Tuesday Morning. You know, Tuesday Morning never has the same thing twice when you go in there. So, but it was Christmas paper, and I knew I needed it, so I grabbed it anyway. But in the morning, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to cut some of my paper, 3x3 squares is what will fit on these blocks, because they're 3 3/8 squares, and I want a little of the green to show as a border. And so I'm going to get my paper cut, and then as soon as I get all those cut, each block will need 6 squares, and then I'll start Mod Podging the blocks. Okay, everybody, I have my scrapbook squares cut out. I've got 12 squares cut out for each set. I went ahead and Mod Podged 3 of the sets. Let me just kind of hold them up and show you what they look like. And they're still kind of wet. That Mod Podge dries pretty quick. But I tell you what I tried to do, and I don't really know if it makes a difference. You know, like for example, those gingerbread men are standing up that way. You know, I'm not really sure. I guess, you know, as long as your numbers, you know, are all going in the same direction, because there may be a situation. I think the main thing is just make sure your numbers are upright in the way the paper goes, in the direction of the paper. Like for example, these gift, you know, Christmas presents. Just make sure that the letter, you know, and that's just common sense. So anyway, and in the description box, I will have, you know, what numbers. I mean, what numbers are going to go on block 1 and what numbers go on block 2. Because there is a difference. And so all I did was took the Mod Podge and just put a kind of a liberal amount on the base of it, and just kind of positioned it. I didn't spend a whole lot of time doing this because I've got to go over it again once I get my numbers cut out like that. And then I just work all the way around it until I get all 6 sides covered. And I may have mentioned this, that the squares I cut are 3 by 3, so that gives me a little bit of a border. And I think I showed you last night. I'll finish that in a few minutes. But you see how that goes. I just Mod Podge, you know, put a layer of Mod Podge, put the paper on, and then just do a quick little coat over it because I still got to go over it with a number. But I'm glad that I decided to keep the base a solid color. I'm going to write on here, Till Santa or Till Christmas. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to put on there. But I'm glad I left them blank because since the blocks are so busy and decorative, I think that's going to look good once, you know, once they all get done. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish Mod Podging my paper. I need to finish cutting out my numbers, and then I'll come back and we'll see what the next step is. Okay, I now have all my blocks finished, and what I went ahead and did is, you know, I wanted to have more of an aged looking finish, or like a vintage color. And so now that my blocks are completely dry, I used some Distress ink by Tim Holtz. It's a Ranger product. You can get that at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, and I just dab it, and it just kind of knocks the stark off a little bit. It just kind of ages it a little bit, even with the Mod Podge on there. And I go around both cubes and go around all the edges. And this is actually vintage photo color, is what it is. And this applicator is also, it's called a mini ink blending tool. And it doesn't matter if it's, you know, not perfect, because that's the way it's supposed to look. It's supposed to look vintage and kind of spotty. Okay, I'm going to finish that, but I just want to show you I did that before I start my letters. But let me just give you a better look of what the vintage looks like. You know, it's just kind of ages it a little bit. Okay, all right, and then I cut out my letters on my Cameo, and if you're interested in the font, I used American Typewriter. And so on this block, and I'll have it in the description box, in this block I need 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this block will be 0, 1, 2, 6, 7, and 8. And the 6 can be a 6 or a 9. Okay? And so I cut my numbers about 2 inches by 2 inches. I tried to get them as big as possible. And so now I'm just going to get my Mod Podge. And do just like I did the paper. Put down a base of Mod Podge. Center my number up as good as possible. And just go over it. And it doesn't take a whole lot to seal it. Okay. And then I'll do that block, and then it'll be almost done except for putting the words on the base. And I wanted to show you about this Mod Podge. I noticed if some of you shop at Dollar Tree, that they now have Mod Podge at the Dollar Tree, and it's 2 ounces for $1, which is not a bad deal if you're not a big crafter, and you know, and even this product, and even this job, it's going to take probably over 2 ounces. So I mean, I would have probably still had to buy a couple dollars with the Mod Podge, but this at Walmart is 16 ounces for $7.42 is what this was at Walmart. And so really, if you're a big crafter, this is still the better deal. You know, Mod Podge lasts for a long time as long as you keep the top on there good. And so, you know, the Mod Podge, the little 2 ounce bottles are great if you just have a little project, like you're going to do some coasters or something like that. But I was surprised to see it, and it's great for, you know, little projects. But anyway, I just want to tell you that, you know, this is still the better deal. All right, I'm going to finish distressing my blocks and put my numbers on, and then I'll get to the point to where I'm ready to put the words on the block, the 2x4 base. Thought I'd just give you a quick shot before I start the base to the blocks. I got all my blocks done, all 6 sides, and I think they turned out really vintage looking. I think they'll be really cute, and so now I'm going to move these out of the way, and then I'll come back with the 2x4 bases. Okay, I am ready to do the base of my blocks, and I went ahead and did 3 of them, and I had some Cricut vinyl that I wanted to go ahead and get rid of, because any of you that work with vinyl know that Cricut vinyl is the absolute worst. You might as well just be using paper. But anyway, I thought it'd be a little easier just because it was a little stickier, but I decided to. And those of you that don't work with vinyl, you know, I cut it out, and then you put this transfer paper over it. And you know, and if you do decide to make one of these, you know, they sell, you know, all kinds of these letter stickers and the big number stickers. So you know, you don't have to have a vinyl cutter. But normally with good quality vinyl, you shouldn't have, it should just rip right off. It'll stick on there. But this is a Cricut brand, and those of you that know that it's not worth even bringing home. So I have to kind of hold it down as I pull it, because it just won't stick. I even Mod Podge the wood and it still won't stick, but it's working. I mean, it'll work once I get it all off, and I didn't have to waste it. Normally this should take 2 seconds to rip off. And I tried craft paper, but then you really would have to piece it each letter, and I didn't want to have to do that. You know, once you get the transfer tape off, it stays on there pretty good for a little while. Okay, and since it was white vinyl, I didn't really want it that stark, so I'm going to get my vintage photo out and just kind of dab it. It just knocks the white stark off, since everything else is kind of muted, and I wanted it to be kind of muted. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut away, and I'm going to come back and show you how I decided to finish them off. So basically they're done, And but I want to show you what little extra touch I'm going to add to them. All right, here is my finished vintage-inspired countdown blocks. This is such a beginner craft project that anybody can do it. My original plan was to do some little burlap ribbon bow, but actually in my stash I found this kind of antiqued ribbon, and with it being kind of dull and muted, I thought it needed just a little sparkle. But the ribbon kind of disguises the other numbers that aren't being used, and each strip of ribbon, I just stapled it a couple times on the bottom of the base, and each ribbon is about 22 inches long, and I just tied it like you would at your shoe. And so I thought it turned out pretty cute. Anxious to give a few away as gifts, and looking forward to it. And also I can trade out the blocks, change the blocks up without interfering with the bow, so that worked out good too. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about the products or process, feel free to comment or send me an email or any way I can help you. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.